Well, hi everyone. I thought it was time to do a follow-up video about the ongoing demolition of the Westbound Bridge in Rhode Island, I-195 over the Seekonk River. There's been a lot of talk in social media. The director of the Rhode Island DOT, Peter Alviti, made a couple of appearances on talk radio on WPRO in Providence, and I'll certainly be addressing the statements that he made in those appearances. So let's just, as a refresher, show these two segments. This was sent to me by someone who has sources that are actually involved with this demolition work.
Oh my.
So again, we're talking about the ramp from Westbound Bridge over to Gano Street. This area is circled here. Before I get into the details of this video, and I think you'll be quite interested in what I have to say in today's video, I want to thank those of you in Rhode Island and surrounding areas who have reached out to me and offered a variety of support. Many of you have expressed your appreciation for my continued involvement with this story and continuing to post videos. And to that end, for example, I've had people offer me guest stays at their home. People have offered to take me to dinner, buy me a beer. In this case, Josh collected drone footage that he sent me last night. I hadn't even talked to him until he had already done that. And certainly Chris has collected drone footage again for me on this bridge. So I very much appreciate it. I mean, the drone footage work done by Josh and Chris were done as a courtesy to me. So again, I really appreciate it. So let's look at some of this footage from Josh and Chris. This is from yesterday, Monday, February 3rd. You can just see there's a tremendous amount of debris that smashed down on these barges. And it's going to take a lot of work. You can see they're breaking up that material and moving spilled material onto a third barge, which is not ideal, and I'll explain why here in a moment. But great views, very clear evening. Looks like everybody's got their headlights on, headed home for the day. But yeah, just a lot of debris. And so if we look at this footage that was collected by Chris today, February 4th, you can see very little progress has been made in removing all of this debris from Monday to Tuesday. And it's about a full 24-hour period that's represented between these two drone flight sessions. So what set this whole thing off with the director of the DOT was a video, I suppose, that I posted Saturday night about what appeared to me to be an accident or something not according to plan due to dropping whole sections, whole spans of this reinforced concrete fascia, smashing it down onto a barge and knocking portions of the barge below the water line. In fact, my video was a follow-up to a Go Local story about this accident situation as they had reported it. So as I mentioned, Rhode Island DOT Director Peter Alviti made two appearances yesterday on WPRO. The first was on the Gene Valicenti show, and the second was on Tara Granahan show. So I'm going to play excerpts and respond accordingly.
Well, it looks the way it looks. The demolition was planned, it was controlled, and it was executed in accordance with the plan, and the result was exactly what the plan showed the results would be.
Well, I've been on many bridge sites that included demolition, and this didn't look to be fully controlled whatsoever. And so, again, from a confidential source, I was sent an excerpt of the demolition plan for this project. Now, this was the plan according to this insider's information, to the extent that this doesn't represent the plan anymore or it changed, I'll let Director Alviti address that if he cares to. This document shows an orderly demolition process done in steps. So you see the blue areas on the side, that was supposed to be demoed first. And then towards the end, you had these green areas at the center of these fascia panels that were demoed. So once they broke through this green area, the fascia panel was to break in two pieces with the inside end of each piece resting on these cushions on what they call an explosion mat, and in turn on a couple of barges that go to either side of the piers. And as we know, this isn't what happened. Instead of the two pieces coming down and resting on the assembly there, the support assembly, the whole piece came crashing down.
Oh my.
So one thing you'll notice, it looks like there was supposed to be, according to the plan, a large or high cushion that would have prevented those fascia pieces from falling so far and gaining so much momentum. I mean, once they were allowed to fall to that low a level, the momentum just brought the entire span down. But Director Alviti continued to say in these radio appearances how this was all perfectly executed to the plan.
The outcome of all of this is that the contractor executed the plan according to the plan. They executed the demolition according to the plan. The result was exactly what the plan called for, which was the demolition of the span to be demolished at either end, and then in the center to allow it to fall onto barges which were placed below to catch the debris. Two barges were placed below. They had an armor, timber armor on the decks of them, and they also had explosive cushions on the deck to kind of cushion the impact of the falling beams when they were demolished. It did exactly that. If you look at the pictures on the plans that were approved, it shows the structure coming down in exactly the way the videos that someone took from the shore adjacent to the demolition the day it fell. The video showed that it fell exactly the way the plans had called for. So it was planned, it was controlled. The barges were there specifically to catch. They weren't there inadvertently, as some people are saying, the beam fell on them. They were actually there to catch the beams when they came down, and they did that.
Well, again, I don't see how Director Alviti could possibly assert that this was all done according to plan. I mean, we've got a side-by-side look here of what was sent to me as an excerpt from the demolition plan and what they actually did on the right. And you can see on the left-hand side that whole half of that fascia panel collapsed onto the barge instead of one end still resting on the pier so that they could slowly, methodically remove the rest of the material instead of having many pieces of debris spill off the barge into the Seekonk River. So that does not look like it was done according to the plan to me. But I think he said this was done in accordance with the plan 5 or 6 times on these radio appearances.
It is a messy business. They don't fall gently when you've got several hundred tons of concrete coming down. It does not fall gently, but that's part of demolition. It was expected. Nothing happened that was unexpected. The equipment that was specified was exactly in the positions and doing the job and the proper type of equipment in accordance with the approved plans.
Well, again, I think part of that is accurate, where he says that it was expected. Apparently, there were several dozen workers standing around anticipating the spectacle of a large span of this fascia panel, essentially the whole panel between piers, crashing down on the barge. But again, if you look at the construction plans, the demolition plans, that's not how it was to be done. And there's another interesting development. This was reported by WJAR yesterday. And the headline here is Washington Bridge demolition prompts environmental concerns, OSHA inspection. It says NBC 10 confirmed Monday that the U.S. Department of Labor is inspecting the Washington Bridge demo subcontractor, J.R. Vinogro Corporation, to determine if there were any violations of OSHA workplace safety standards. I can't think of an instance when work at a construction site was done fully in accordance with a plan that still needed to be investigated by OSHA for potential safety violations. So as I mentioned, I was alerted to this story by local contacts. I found this Go Local article where they assert that this demolition had gone wrong as well. And if you just strip out the details of the demolition plan and just look at it from a business standpoint, what would you rather have? Would you rather have sections of this demo bridge land in a manageable fashion on the barge without spilling into the river, without knocking the barge partially below the water line and having it list, and have to unload it to a third barge before those other barges could be removed from the area? That's what's called double handling of material. And this is a very conservative estimate, but if you take an excavator and an operator in this part of the country, it's easily $1,000 an hour to operate, and I think that's quite low, particularly when you consider potential impacts to idled associated cranes and equipment that can't do any additional work until this debris has been cleared out. So if you just say it would take a full day, which again, I think it's going to take longer than that, to remove the debris from the barges that were under the bridge that was being demoed and unload it to a third barge, you're talking $8,000 to $10,000 a day in extra cost. So I don't know why anybody would plan to incur those extra costs if they could do it in a different way. There's just a tremendous amount of debris both on the barge and more material than I think anybody would like that spilled into the river.
There's also some chatter about, putting the adjacent eastbound Washington Bridge that we're currently using to divert traffic over, that may have put that in jeopardy. In fact, this demolition at the closest proximity, this demolition was to that, it was about 150 feet, and at the other end about 250 feet away from that bridge, so it was not even close. There was no issue with regard to any kinds of issues placing the existing structure in any kind of a jeopardy.
Okay.
All right. Well, one of the services that I provided on many bridge projects is to monitor an existing bridge while construction activity was going on right next to that bridge to build a new bridge. And I've monitored railroad bridges that were built in the 1880s, for example, very sensitive structures where the contractor was constrained in the level of vibration that could be generated. And it's not just the levels of vibration, it's the frequency of the vibration. So many times, specification requirements state that you shall monitor within anywhere from 100 to 300 feet away from vibration-inducing activities. And if you have large pieces of debris dropping down into the river, those typically produce very low frequency vibrations, which tend to be the most damaging to adjacent structures that may be considered to be sensitive. So I don't know how Director Alviti could say that there were absolutely no negative impacts to the eastbound bridge. As far as I know, they still don't have their structural health monitoring system in place. This was a $2.7 million system, included a weigh-in-motion system as well as instrumentation throughout the existing bridge to monitor the structural health of the eastbound bridge, which is now of critical importance because it's the only way to get across on I-195 across the Seekonk River right now. And they just have a system of strain gauges, accelerometers, and other instrumentation to make sure no ill effects are occurring to the bridge, either from the increased amount of traffic or adjacent construction activities. If you go to the justification The eastbound Washington Bridge has become considerably more sensitive since the closing of the westbound bridge. Ensuring the structural integrity of the bridge as well as identifying and removing overweight vehicles from the bridge is integral to ensuring the safety of the traveling public. So to summarize here, again, I don't agree that this demolition went in a desirable fashion. And based on the documents I've received from insiders, it doesn't look like it was done in accordance with their demolition plan. So I'm going to address this other part of Director Alviti's appearances on these radio shows yesterday, where he made personal attacks against me by trying to impugn my conduct, suggesting that I may have done something illegal by making videos about the Washington Bridge project. So let's just play this last segment.
There's an industry out there criticizing you, and there's some of them the same voices. And you've got out-of-state people and bloggers. What do you want to say to these people who are stirring things up over the weekend, that it was done wrong and the opposite of what basically you just said? Go ahead, and I'll take 30 seconds, and I'm going to wrap it.
Well, we had people, I was there, and I had other experts there, experts in structural engineering and in demolition engineering were out there. They designed the plans. The plan was executed. The contractor is highly competent in doing this work. They did it. It went according to plan. Offering opinions, particularly professional engineering opinions, outside a person's area of expertise from 1,000 miles away on YouTube is frankly, at best, irresponsible, at worst, dangerous and illegal from the standpoint of laws governing professional engineer conduct. So I would caution folks to take social media kind of engineering opinions in their proper space, I guess I would say.
I think those comments were outrageous, and I think it's just nothing more than an intimidation tactic. I mean, I've been breaking news about this bridge using insider information, but in particular using information that I've obtained directly from the DOT in the public records request. Again, I'm very grateful to the legal department at Rhode Island DOT who have fulfilled most of these requests. I think they've provided 80% of what I've asked for. Other things they've asserted some privilege on. Some of those I've appealed. But again, they've provided me this information. And I think the fact that I broke the story that the eastbound bridge is carrying both lanes of, or both directions of traffic, built in 2008 on existing foundations that were built in 1930, was only in fair condition, which is one step up above poor and one step down from good. I broke that story. And I also, in the last week, obtained the demolition contract change orders and found out that Aetna Bridge, who is being sued by State of Rhode Island, allegedly for their involvement with previous phases of westbound bridge work, have been paid. The Rhode Island DOT has paid Aetna $462,000 in incentive pay. And that's not something that apparently Rhode Island DOT wanted to have known publicly. So again, I'm a citizen of the United States. I have First Amendment rights that I exercise. And just by virtue of me being an engineer, doesn't mean that I'm offering engineering services or providing engineering services in the course of doing these videos that are, I believe, of a public interest. So that's all I'll say about that right now. But let's play this one segment from Tara's show where Director Alviti made an appearance yesterday.
The whole idea of Aetna is part of this demolition, correct? The company known as Aetna.
Aetna was the low bidder on this contract, yes.
Okay, that's incorrect. Aetna was not the low bidder. There were two proposing teams for the demolition contract, Aetna and Sigma-Manafort. Let's start with Sigma-Manafort. Sigma-Manafort's proposed fee for the demolition of the superstructure, it was later modified to include the substructure as a change order to Aetna, who was selected for this work. But Sigma-Manafort bid was $43,849,500. And these documents came from Rhode Island DOT. And Aetna was at $45,777,000, and they got the award. So they were $1.9 million higher than the actual low bidder. So I don't know why Director Alviti would assert that Aetna was the low bidder. So I detail all that information about the change orders in a video I just posted yesterday on February 3rd, if you want to check that out. Well, again, I want to thank everyone. A few months ago, I opened up Buy Me a Coffee, and many of you have elected to contribute to that. That really offsets my production costs, and now it looks like I may be incurring other expenses to deal with people that are trying to muzzle me. I also want to thank those of you who are channel members. That's a great way to support the channel, as well as those of you who provided super thanks. Again, I appreciate everyone's support, encouragement, and I'll keep covering these stories. I'm not going anywhere. Thanks very much, everyone.